the head of the world's most powerful search company, just told the BBC something that Silicon Valley executives have been desperately avoiding saying in public for months. The current astronomical valuations of AI technology firms might be a bubble, and when it bursts, no company will escape the fallout, including his own. This isn't some outside analyst or skeptical economist making predictions.
Maybe 4 years ago, Google was spending less than $30 billion per year. It's also true when we go through these investment cycles, there are moments we overshoot, actively add what all the companies are doing. We have well over $1 trillion of investment. We can look back at the internet right now. There was clearly a lot of excess investment. Question whether the internet was profound or did it drive a lot of impact. It's fundamentally changed how we work digitally. No company is going to be immune, including us. If you overinvest, we'll have to work through that phase.
This is Sundar Pichai, the man who's been running Google for an entire decade, openly admitting that the AI investment boom contains what he specifically described as irrational elements. But here's what makes this admission genuinely fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Google is currently spending over $90 billion per year on AI infrastructure, triple what they spent just 4 years ago, and Pichai is simultaneously saying this investment frenzy is both rational and irrational depending on which part of the industry you're examining. Once you understand what he actually revealed about which companies are positioned to survive versus which ones are headed for catastrophic collapse, why he's warning governments about infrastructure investments they're not prepared to make, and what this means for jobs that millions of people assume are secure, you'll realize we're watching the early stages of the biggest economic shakeout in technology since the dot-com crash 25 years ago. Sundar Pichai, who has run Google for the past decade, sat down for an extensive interview with BBC economics editor Faisal Islam and made remarkably candid statements about the current state of artificial intelligence investment and where the technology industry is actually headed. Pichai stated unequivocally that AI models should not be blindly trusted by users or organizations, and he issued a stark warning that governments around the world would have to invest substantially more in infrastructure to cope with the technology's immense energy requirements that are already straining electrical grids. Pichai began by framing the current moment in historical context, explaining that even by Silicon Valley's notoriously exaggerated standards, this represents an extraordinary inflection point. Every decade or so, a genuinely transformative technology emerges that reshapes how society functions. The personal computer revolution came first. Then the internet arrived in the late 1990s, followed by mobile technology, then cloud computing infrastructure, and now clearly the era of artificial intelligence has arrived with full force. But here's where the scale becomes genuinely mind-boggling. Faisal Islam asked Pichai to provide concrete numbers about the sheer magnitude of investment flooding into AI infrastructure. Just 4 years ago, Google was spending less than $30 billion annually on capital expenditures. This year, that number will exceed $90 billion, representing a tripling of investment in an extremely short time frame. And if you collectively add what all the major technology companies are doing simultaneously, the industry has well over $1 trillion of investment going into building the physical and digital infrastructure for this AI transformation moment. Islam immediately pressed Pichai on the obvious question that's circulating around the entire world right now. Is this massive investment wave actually a bubble? The question is particularly relevant given the massive market excitement and the obvious parallels to previous technology hype cycles that ended in spectacular crashes. Pichai's answer was remarkably nuanced and honest compared to typical corporate executive spin. He stated that Google sees genuine real demand for AI capabilities, and the company is currently constrained in its ability to serve that existing demand due to infrastructure limitations. Given the transformative potential of this technology, the excitement and investment is very rational on a fundamental level. However, Pichai then made the critical admission that changes everything about how we should interpret current AI valuations. He acknowledged that it's also absolutely true that when industries go through these massive investment cycles, there are inevitable moments when companies collectively overshoot rational investment levels. He pointed to the internet boom as a perfect historical parallel. Looking back at the late 1990s dot-com era, there was clearly a tremendous amount of excess investment and irrational exuberance.
Maybe 4 years ago, Google was spending less than $30 billion per year. It's also true when we go through these investment cycles, there are moments we overshoot, actively add what all the companies are doing. We have well over $1 trillion of investment. We can look back at the internet right now. There was clearly a lot of excess investment.
But none of us today would seriously question whether the internet was genuinely profound or whether it drove massive real-world impact. It fundamentally changed how we work digitally as a society in ways that justify the investment, even if the timing and specific allocation was often irrational. Pichai expects artificial intelligence to follow exactly the same pattern. The technology is both genuinely transformative and genuinely overhyped simultaneously. Both things can be true. So he thinks the current investment wave is fundamentally rational in the aggregate. But there are also clear elements of irrationality embedded throughout the ecosystem, particularly in certain segments of the market. And then Pichai made the statement that should terrify investors and employees across the technology sector. No company is going to be immune from the consequences, including Google itself. If companies overinvest relative to actual revenue generation, they will have to work through a painful correction phase where valuations collapse and spending gets slashed. Pichai emphasized that for many years, Google has taken what he describes as a deeply differentiated approach to how they've approached AI development and deployment.
Question whether the internet was profound or did it drive a lot of impact. It's fundamentally changed how we work digitally. No company is going to be immune, including us. If you overinvest, we'll have to work through that phase.
Because of that strategic positioning, Google is better positioned than most competitors to take a genuinely long-term view and navigate through this volatile moment without facing existential threats. But the implicit message was clear. Many other companies lack that positioning and face severe risk. Faisal Islam, serving as BBC economics editor, provided critical context for understanding what's actually happening in Silicon Valley right now. He described visiting the Mountain View headquarters of Google and experiencing firsthand the total frenzy surrounding AI investment, the sheer physical infrastructure needed, the massive energy consumption required, the trillions of dollars being deployed. It creates an atmosphere of manic urgency.
Or your goods and your services is to automate many human tasks, is it not?
First refrigerator in the home. How much it radically changed my mom's life.
Hang on a minute, it's affecting lawyers' jobs, it's affecting creative industries, it's affecting accounting jobs, it's affecting journalism.
It'll end up creating new opportunities. As an example, I think anybody, just like YouTube has done, it will create new opportunities. It will evolve and transition certain jobs, right? And people will need to adapt. How do you develop this technology responsibly and give society time to adapt?
Google tripled their annual investment from $30 to $90 billion. Other major technology companies are following similar trajectories. Pichai mentioned $1 trillion of collective investment flowing into the sector. Islam emphasized that the critical question is determining how much of this investment reflects genuine economic value versus speculative mania. Pichai's answer suggested that much of it is real and will genuinely change the world, which of course he would say given his position. But Islam suggested there's legitimate truth to that assessment. However, certain elements definitely reflect irrational exuberance and speculative excess. In financial markets, analysts are drawing sharp distinctions between large established companies with massive existing revenue streams and newer AI-focused companies that lack diversified business models. Google generates hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue quarterly from their existing search advertising business and emerging AI products. Companies like Amazon are generating enormous cash flows that they're reinvesting almost entirely into AI infrastructure. These companies can sustain massive investment because they have the revenue to support it. But there are other segments of the AI ecosystem where companies are borrowing money through increasingly exotic lending arrangements to fund operations. That's probably where the markets are identifying the highest risk of collapse. And that's likely what Sundar Pichai was referring to when he mentioned irrational elements. Islam reminded viewers that even during the infamous dot-com bubble 25 years ago, which represents the canonical example of technology speculation, Amazon's share price collapsed to just $6 per share at the bottom today. Amazon is a $4 trillion company, so bubbles and corrections don't mean the underlying technology isn't transformative. They just mean valuations and investment timing were irrational. People are waiting for a significant shakeout where weaker companies collapse and stronger companies consolidate their positions. The implicit message from Pichai was that Google is strategically positioned to survive and even thrive during that shakeout because they invest across the entire technology stack, from massive specialized AI chips to the large language models running on them, rather than being dependent on a single product or revenue stream. Mark Cieslak, serving as BBC AI correspondent, provided additional analysis emphasizing that we're witnessing a form of digital Darwinism playing out in real time. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos made similar comments several months ago, suggesting that only the strongest companies with the most robust business models will survive what's coming.
Every company gets funded, the good ideas and the bad ideas. But it doesn't mean that anything that's happening isn't real. Like, AI is real. The biggest impact that AI is going to have is it is going to affect every company in the world.
The situation is genuinely reminiscent of the dot-com bubble at the turn of the century, but the critical variable is company valuation relative to actual revenue and product diversification. Google is in an extraordinarily strong position because it's highly diversified. Their search business generates absolutely enormous revenue. They own platforms like YouTube that operate as independent revenue engines. Then you have newer companies entering the AI space, like OpenAI, that carry massive valuations, approaching or exceeding $500 billion, despite lacking the same kind of diversified product lineup or revenue generation that Google has established. Google is heavily insulated from bubble-related risks, while companies like OpenAI are extraordinarily exposed if investor sentiment shifts or if they fail to convert hype into sustainable revenue. The conversation turned to perhaps the most pressing question for ordinary people. What happens to jobs and livelihoods as AI increasingly automates tasks that humans currently perform? Faisal Islam noted that the sheer magnitude of investment is fundamentally about automating human tasks, which inevitably means automating human jobs and potentially destroying livelihoods at scale. When journalists speak with technology executives, the leaders typically stress optimistic win-win scenarios where everyone can successfully retrain and transition into new roles. But Islam detected a growing sense of uncomfortable reality setting in. Viewers with graduate-age children are already witnessing it in an increasingly difficult job market positions that previous generations expected to be available in creative industries, in legal services, in accounting and finance. They're proving much harder to secure because some of these roles are being automated through large language models, not always successfully due to accuracy issues, but enough to reduce hiring. Pichai's answer to this challenge was that individuals should train themselves using AI tools, and if you know how to effectively use AI, you'll be better positioned in the competitive job market. But that's obviously not a solution for everyone whose role gets completely automated.
Mark Cieslak emphasized a critical point about trust and truth in the AI era. People must now question absolutely everything they encounter on social media platforms. And they must also question outputs they receive from chatbots and AI assistants, because these systems routinely make things up. They hallucinate false information. They get basic facts wrong consistently. Many of these products are simply not ready for widespread deployment, despite being marketed as reliable tools. They have significant utility for certain applications, absolutely. But if you're relying on them for accurate answers or replicable results, you're fundamentally using the wrong kind of technology for that purpose. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.